Good evening. Thank you for joining me here this evening, or morning, or afternoon from wherever you're watching this video. I hope you're doing really well. I hope you've had a wonderful day, and thank you for joining me here now to relax. So, it's been a while since I've filmed a video on this channel. It's my second channel, so I don't post content on here quite as much. It's also something I'm not quite used to yet. On my main channel, I usually just film myself in the real world, getting appointments. It's strange. I almost don't feel like the cameras are there most of the time, whereas this, I'm very aware that you guys are joining me here tonight. But ASMR is something I've really loved for a long time now, and I really want to get good at it and help you guys relax. And it's also relaxing for me, just having the chance to speak to you all. Today's video is so fresh for me that for the previous videos I filmed on this channel, I've tried my best to buy the physical copy of the book each time, and my little confession for today is I read this book, this series, so quickly that I just have my Kindle version, which I can't make sounds with a e-version of a book, so you'll all have to bear with me as I just kind of ramble about the book in this video. But I hope this video is still relaxing nonetheless, and I hope you all find something about this book interesting. So first of all, I'm going to summarize the plot slightly, so if you haven't read the book before, it's still okay. You don't have to click off just yet. I want to try my best to make this spoiler free, but after I've done the summary of the book, please do stop watching if you don't want any spoilers. So you've been warned. But first of all, I'll give a short summary. So you may have seen from the title, but the book I'm going to be reviewing today is Guild. I have to actually check the names because there's a few of them. I recently read the first, second and third of the series. I believe the fourth has recently come out and the fifth is due out end of this year. I'll explain the reason why I haven't read the fourth in a bit, as I have some quite strong opinions on the subject. But for a summary, this series, Guild, it's a retelling of King Midas, the legend of King Midas. I don't know the original story of King Midas too well, but then again, I don't think most of us know all the details. Most people, myself included, we know he has powers to turn things he touches into gold, and I believe that inevitably causes things to go wrong, and I think he ends up maybe harming others and himself in the process. I also think the gold touch might have been a trick or a curse, but again, this is kind of my base level knowledge on the subject. But this story is a retelling, a really interesting retelling that provides an extra perspective to the tale. So our main character, called Oren, she is a gold-touched saddle, and this surprised me in the first few pages as well, because I didn't know the word saddle, but I think she's basically, in the politest terms, part of the king's harem. But she, unlike the other girls in the king's harem, is gold, and that makes her special. She's kind of a coveted object in the palace. She fascinates all the guests that come, and the most fascinating of all is that she lives in a cage, a golden cage, like a pet. So it's not just a small cage that Oren lives in, it's a cage that is kind of built half into the palace, so she can still enter the rooms that she's allowed to enter as she pleases, but within each of these rooms the cage extends into them, which is very fascinating. The reason that she's allowed this, despite on the surface being a pet, is that she is the favoured girl of King Midas, even more so than his wife, and she is his treasure, and he calls her precious. So that might just give you a hint of kind of where the story will start unfolding, in that this girl, Oren, she's been left in a cage and she's madly in love with King Midas. She believes she's his true love because that's all she's ever known. He comes to her cage sometimes to talk to her, and he confides in her, so she believes that Midas is her true love, her saviour. Yes, the story picks up from there, kind of seeing this love, this strange, warped version of love unfold. Yes, I think it was the best opening of a book I've read in a while, in that it was certainly shocking and intriguing, and all these things that captured my attention from the first page, just because it really took me into this world of indulgence in the palace and gold everywhere, the kind of life of Oren living in this cage. And so I don't know, I'm quite hard to please when it comes to starting books. Sometimes once I get into them, even if it gets maybe a bit more boring, at least I'm already invested. But starting a book is sometimes a challenge for me, and this book really captured my attention from the outset. But that's it now for the introduction. So if you do want to avoid spoilers, I highly recommend clicking off here, and thank you for joining me up until this point. Right, so straight into it. My opinions on this series, so not just the first book, are very bittersweet. I think I don't even know where to start, really. I think it had so much potential, and something about it did keep me going. So there was this uniqueness to it that I really loved. Surprisingly, Oren, the main character, was one of the most likable female characters I've read in a while, and I don't quite know why. Um, I've read online, I was on Goodreads and I saw some people hated her, so I don't know why. I think I recognised a bit of myself in her, and that she was in all these really crap situations but was always like, look on the bright side. She was always quite active and I really liked that. She didn't complain about her circumstances very often, ever in fact. And I think in a lot of the YA books I've read, a lot of these characters are complaining half the time, and rightfully so. They're often in really, really difficult situations, but I guess that's what made it refreshing, is that it felt like a real person living in this world that wasn't complaining about all these new exciting situations she was thrust into, despite them on the whole being a lot more graphic than other YA books. A lot of the things that happened in these books were quite real in nature, in that there was the kind of I don't think power dynamics, not the right word, the kind of like the relationship between King Midas and Oren was, well, let's not say it was a stable, happy one. Very manipulative on the part of King Midas, clearly using Oren to meet his own means. She was just a tool to him to some respect, even though I'm sure there was love there, and that was painted so well. And to be honest, most of what kept me going, even when I became a bit disillusioned with this series, it was the relationship between King Midas and Oren, because I just knew it was gonna blow up, and I feel bad, but part of me was so excited for her to just like blow up and go attack him and stand her in ground, and it was really refreshing to read. It actually reminded me of Akatar with Feyre, kind of when she came back in book 3, I think, to live with Tamlin again, and she was almost like a secret spy, because she was woke now. She understood the manipulation and then could fight against it. It had a very similar feeling to that. And I do think this book is inspired by Akatar to an extent, and that's where my first complaint happens, is that I don't understand the need for the Fae in this series. It was going so well without the Fae, and I just don't know why they needed to be there. Like, understandably there were only 2 of them, just Oren and, well, whatever we have to call him, Rip, Slade, or King Ravenger. Again, that's also a bit confusing, but that's fine. I think there could have been a different way of explaining these magical powers without having them be Fae. I understand that probably to get the book sold nowadays, Fae in this time and age is what vampires were back when I was a teenager. They're the hip, cool thing that you need to have for your book to sell. But the fact that this book was using Greek mythology, I'm no expert on the subject, but I think there could have just been some Greek mythology equivalent to the Fae that could have been just as exciting, if not a bit more new and novel. It just felt like so obvious the moment this new man, this love interest, is introduced. It was suddenly this expectation of, this man is a Fae, he will be the love interest. In fact, Slade, or whatever we're going to call him, is in fact never referred to as a man. He's referred to as a male, and oh my gosh, I'm not that easily irritated by repetition of wordings. I've read multiple Sarah J. Maas books and I just let it slide over my head. It's fine. You can tell she clearly hasn't read over her work many times, and I think that's a good thing. When I write, I just read over and over what I've written, and it's such a bad habit that I comb through the work so much that there's no creativity there anymore. So I can tell these people are writing on the spot, and it's so impressive. But this is a different issue altogether. This is a choice. She has made a choice to refer to this guy as a male, and it's just so weird. I'm sorry, there's nothing else I can say about that. I just found it really jarring. I found it really strange, and the thing is, I've seen it before in other works with Faye where they have this like weird animalistic overtone, and I'm just not a fan. So but maybe it's my fault for not coming into this expecting a Faye story, but it's not like I hate them. I love the Cruel Prince series. I love ACOTAR, so yeah, surprising. But again, I think a lot of my complaints with this book would have been solved if maybe the author hadn't been so probably out to fit in with the genre. So anyway, that's that. One thing I did love, again makes me think, why did they need to be Fae, was their powers were so unique and refreshing. They weren't just undefined, like kind of moody shadows, or turning into beasts, but not like really clear why or how. They had really interesting magical powers. Orin had these ribbons that came out of her back, as well as her gold touch, and the power was kind of defined. It had limits. She couldn't use it at night. She had to put things on her skin. I really liked how well that was defined. Slade's power, even the power of rot, it was just so out there and unexpected for a love interest. They usually try and make it something more moody, like the power of shadows or like wings and stuff, and I really liked that it was something new. But yeah, that's a thing I really enjoyed from this book. But I must say, because my favourite part of this series was the dynamic of Orin kind of waking up, having and getting this proper perspective on her life up until this point, realising she doesn't need to be in a cage and that she doesn't want to be. It kind of meant that the end of book 3, where Orin did, well, kill Midas, felt like the end of my journey with this series. I tried so hard to continue with book 4, and it just didn't happen. I lost all interest in the story, especially considering Orin just wasn't there for the first part of it. I just think it could have gone so many other ways. I don't know. For once, I don't. Sometimes when I get really annoyed about the progression of a story, I get my memo out on my phone and I try and rewrite it in bullet points. I try to think, if I had come up with something like this, what are the issues that are bothering me, and how would I write it differently? And I like this exercise because as someone that really wants to write, I hope my books don't make anyone feel this way in the future, and I hope I can learn from what feels missing when I read things, but I haven't done that yet with this book, and I'm honestly not sure, other than delaying Midas's death, what could have made it better for me. I don't know if that's just me and maybe other people felt a different way, but I think I would have liked to have seen different kind of political intrigues take centre stage, and not have Oren's powers revealed just yet, but have some sort of different kind of Midas trying to cover up his powers while Oren goes off with Ravenger and they have to meet on the political stage kind of thing. I just would have preferred that, with the world being very confused that Ravenger has stolen Midas's favourite, and kind of that dynamic you had with Reason and Tamlin, where Feyre switches and she's kind of by society seen as like the stolen kind of princess or love interest, and I think that would have been really interesting to see. Let me think what else about this book. It's gonna sound like I have lots of complaints, but the fact that I'm making this video is because I really want to talk about this book, because something about it did capture my interest, and I think the first half of the first book was just a really, really good read. I didn't expect it to go where it went, where Oren was captured by the pirates. I think I expected something else entirely, where maybe I just expected her to get lost, or her carriage break down and somehow she's made captive, but then someone would save her, or she has to live a normal life again. I don't know what I was expecting, but I definitely didn't expect these pirates to appear and all that. But the reveal about her powers it took me so by surprise, and I think it's what made me stick with this series. I just wasn't expecting something like that, and it felt very new and refreshing. And maybe I haven't read enough books or retellings, but I really, really liked the idea that the whole story was based on someone else taking the credit for someone else's powers. I really liked that. So it's kind of like the misunderstood hero in the background. Yet, like, especially when the other saddles were being mean to her, it was so fun to read, because as the reader you just had this knowledge that made everything that much deeper. I really, really liked it. But yeah, the next point I was going to make was I really disliked I can't remember her name, Queen Melina, I believe, Queen Melina, who is Midas's wife. She sometimes gets her own chapters from her point of view, and I really disliked them to the extent that I would kind of be glossing over the pages, just trying to read bullet points, almost as if I was back in university, just glancing over textbooks that I don't want to read. I really couldn't care less, and to be honest, I didn't even barely read the final chapter where I think she died, and that kind of made me think, what was the point? Because her chapters didn't make me like her, and I don't think they were meant to make us like her, so why bother? By that point it didn't add anything. I could have been told from Oren's perspective, hearing from Midas that Melina died, or something similar, and had just as much shock. I understand why Midas's point of view was necessary, and to an extent it was interesting, because we got to see how his mind worked. I think I understood that. I don't ever love too much in books when it's not just first person. Personally, I really like being invested in the one character I fall in love with straight away. But I understand why it was needed, and to be honest, if all books were first person, if you've got one character you don't like, it's not gonna be too much fun. So yeah, I think it was necessary. Again, another thing I did feel like skipping was Oren's backstory. I think there was enough references to her backstory within her internal monologue that I didn't actually need it. There were a few kind of chapters put in between, like interludes of her relationship with Zarid. I can't actually remember, but this man that kept her and other children on the streets to work for him to get money, begging. But I feel like I could have been told that in a few sentences and would have felt just as sad for her. I don't feel like I needed it. It was already so clear from the start that Oren had a crap life and Midas was the light in her life, and I just don't know if I needed the intricacies of that. But again, maybe if the concept had been that she wasn't Fae and it's just some sort of other kind of being that was more ostracized in this world and she had to hide that, I think that could have been a more interesting dynamic to play with. But yeah, I don't know. It's such a weird feeling I have about this series where I still really loved it and I had a good time. I was reading it for like hours on end, but suddenly I just lost interest. The other thing that when reading bothered me slightly was I think there was a tendency of the writer to over-describe things. The reason I can tell this is because I do exactly the same in my writing. Is there were times where there just wasn't enough speech and action. There was just a lot of just describing, and it made me get really bored. It made me skip pages. Yeah, but the plot, I wouldn't say plot, the journey itself was interesting. I've seen people comment online that in book 3, which is weirdly, other than the first half of book 1, my favourite, just because I loved the kind of all these relationships that have been built up, just seeing how they interact, and mainly I just liked the dynamic of Slade versus Midas. There really wasn't much plot. I didn't mind it because I was so invested in these relationships, but it could have been interesting if there had been some sort of actual more, yeah, something that drove the plot a bit more, some sort of intrigue, that maybe some more sort of master plan on Slade's part, because he wasn't doing much other than staying around waiting to get laid. But yeah, I think the same comment for me applies to book 2, where again, not much plot, kind of just slowly falling in love with Slade, which I also didn't enjoy that much in book 2 because it felt too fast. It felt like I turned a page and they were in love and I didn't understand where. And it was a strange one for me. I would have preferred that he'd been a really, really good friend to her, who was able to get through to her about her abusive relationship with Midas, and then because of that she starts to grow and feels grateful to him and realizes it's more than that. But maybe that's a bit too, like, it's not spicy enough for a YA novel. But yeah, I still enjoyed the dynamic. I think it was almost unique in a way to read something that felt so like, it felt like if you plonked characters in certain scenes and just watched them react for days on end, that's how it felt reading this book. It didn't feel like a book with structure and plot. It just felt like multiple scenarios where you watch your Sims kind of move about in their house and interact with one another. But I kind of enjoyed that. It was new and refreshing and just sometimes a bit slow. But yeah, I will probably be reading the 5th book when it comes out after having read a summary of the 4th. I have already read online what happens in the 4th, and it didn't entice me enough to think about reading it. I didn't care for the idea of Risa getting a relationship. I think that kind of made her whole character arc redundant. But yes, I will be reading the 5th one when it comes out. I know it's a while away though. And I'm excited to kind of just see where the story ends, but I'm not sure whether I will enjoy it or not, because I feel like the story that I wanted to read has already ended. But I do recommend this series if you like any of the points I brought up, or I don't know, I'd love to hear what you guys think about what I've said, whether you had the same opinions, whether it's different. If it's different, please by all means do tell me. I love talking about books in the comments. It feels like I found loads of book friends online, so please don't hesitate to comment down below, even if you're not someone that usually comments. And yeah, hopefully I can make a few more of these videos if you're okay with this more casual kind of on the spot spoken session. I hope it was still ASMR to an extent. I know I'm talking kind of softly, but I am a bit overexcited with the content of the video. I get quite happy talking about these reviews, so I hope it was still relaxing in some way, also without the physical copy of the book. I do have something in mind to review next that I also I feel like this might be a recurring theme, but there's another book that I've just dropped the 2nd one of the installment, but I will say it's the best book I've read in a long time, since the most enjoyable book I've read in a long time since Akatar. So I wonder if you guys can guess what it was down in the comments. As for hints, great plot, decent love interest, only one love interest, but very strong plot with lots of action and fighting and fantasy. So I wonder if you guys can guess what it is, especially with the hint that the 2nd one really disappointed me and that I've dropped it. We'll see if you can guess. So thank you all for watching. I hope you've had a nice time, and please don't hesitate to give me any advice or pointers for future videos down in the comments. Thank you, and I love you all. Goodbye.